Hello.
Mhm.
Today, we're going to be listening to Crossroads from Stories from Styx with none other than Persephone herself, Teagan Earley.
Hi everyone. I have been
Hello.
looking forward to this. I'm so excited.
I'm so excited too. The way that I have had to avoid TikTok a lot to not see spoilers for these songs specifically because they were everywhere.
Oh,
Stories
there
from
was a lot. I
Styx.
was
Ooh.
surprised. Very excited, but surprised.
For context, for everybody who has watched the previous episodes of this series, I have had some snippets revealed to me. So I know a little bit of the chorus, I think, from Crossroads, but I think I've only heard the demo version of it. I don't think that I've heard like the finished one yet.
well, I'm excited to see what you think.
But just for the sake of the lore, who are
Yeah.
you? What do you do? What's going on?
My name's Tegan. I also go by Timo as kind of my pop artist name. Um, I am a singer, I am an actor, I am a voice actor, I am a producer. I had the great fortune of originating Athena in Epic, and now I'm playing another goddess, Persephone, in Stories from Styx, which was not on my bingo card for how my career would go, but I'm very, very delighted about it. We'll take it. We'll take it.
Two in a row. That's crazy. So how did you go from being Athena in Epic to Epic finishes out and then Stories from Styx? You become Persephone. Like how did that happen?
I have been involved with Epic since the very dawn of it because I went to undergrad with Jay. So we were kind of high, he was
Wow.
obviously bigwig one on the project, clearly the genius behind it all. I was hired too, which is a pretty cool thing to get to say. It's very surreal when it started to look like it was actually, coming to a close, at least this chapter of things. Um, and during that time, I think it was around right before Wisdom came out or right after Wisdom came out, is when I got connected with Casper Fox. Mortius introduced me to Casper just kind of for fun one day. He had been saying "Oh, Casper really likes your work. I think it would be funny if you just jumped on this Discord call and surprised him." I'm always down for a jump scare. Anyone who knows me knows that.
Right.
I jumped on the call and he was just so darling that it was instant friendship and instant connection. And he reached out to me right after and said, "I have this thing I'm doing and I'm in the very early processes of writing it. I'll be honest, I always pictured your voice for Persephone as I was writing it. I don't know if that's something that you would want to do." And I was like, "Send it over. Let me I'll always listen to something and then figure it out from there." I listened to it and it was Crossroads. This is the greatest, most liberating song I have ever heard, and I want to sing it so badly. I was like, "Okay, I'm in. Where do I sign?"
And now we're here.
Now I am exclusively a Greek mythology voice actor. That's my niche that I found, apparently. No, just kidding. I have other voice acting jobs.
Thus far, I've heard Titanomachy, Shades, and I have now heard In the Underworld Now, which I reacted to with JP, which was very fun. I had a great time with him. Shout out JP. It seems like the beginning half of Stories from Styx is building up context and kind of building the foundation for what is the subtitle of this themed album, which is Hades and Persephone. Crossroads is we're being thrust into the latter half without spoiling. How did you approach this interpretation of Persephone when you were singing? Did you have anything in mind character wise or were you mostly thinking about vocals?
I did have to think about vocals a lot because it is I mean, you'll hear it. It's a very challenging song. So I had to make sure I was really trained up for this one to do it healthily, practicing vocal technique and building my muscles up to especially getting some of those top notes. However, there was a lot of interpretation and expression that went into creating the character of Persephone as she exists in this world. Part of what I love about this particular interpretation is it's complicated. It doesn't really shy away from any of the interpretations. There's a version of this myth that's very violent and very tragic, and there's a version of this myth that's really beautiful. This particular adaptation kind of takes the approach like, why can't it be both? Because so often in love, things are very complicated. Even if it's just self-love that you're dealing with, like that is a very, very tough journey for anyone who experiences any level of semi-mortal feelings. And so it was a lot of figuring out how to navigate the balance between those two sides of things, letting it be complicated and tragic in some ways, while also letting it be incredibly liberating for this character. And I really loved sinking my teeth into that as an actor. Like, that was a really enriching experience for me. And stripping all the other pieces that I would normally add on away if I was doing this on stage, all of a sudden I can only interpret that through my voice. And that was it. It was a really exciting experience.
Before we get into it, I'll ask this question that I've asked like a bajillion times. Did you have any idea about the animatics beforehand, or were you reacting to them in real time?
I had gotten some little tiny snippets because Casper was very generous. He would send me, for example, like a mock-up and be like, what do you think about this? Is there anything you'd change? Do you like how, like, because he tries to base the animatics off of the actors themselves, and so he wanted us Permedes. Can we interview him instead? I bet he would have a lot.
Interview him instead.
I love him.
This all makes me really excited to listen and to see what I think. As we know, the internet is stirring up with opinions in the opinion soup. And what I'm here to do is form my own opinion. And so I'll see what I think when I put my listening ears and my looking goggles on in comparison to what's going on. So the whole thing begins with Hades is like he suffers the burden of misconception, right? And I think that this themed album in its approach to mythology is trying to do its own interpretation of young Hades and kind of the beginnings of everything that goes on. And it seems like there are certain character choices that Casper has made that like I personally really like. I am just overall really excited to see how Crossroads introduces Persephone into the narrative. I'm sure the muse is gonna lock back in. So are you ready to react to Crossroads, which is your song?
Yes.
I think I'm at the right point. Let's see how it begins.
Up above, under blue skies, a beautiful goddess tends to the flowers in her mother's garden. This chapter of the story is the most discussed one when it comes to Hades. Was she a flower that just got picked? You tell me.
Hold on, before I even react to that artwork, hold on. I love the way that this sets everything up. Like, even just the line, like, you tell me. Like, it's almost like Stories from Styx as a project isn't trying to tell you exactly how something went. It's trying to give you the opportunity to decide for yourself. Based on what I've heard before, like, I'm wondering if the following songs, like with the lyrics, will reflect that. I don't know. I think it's really interesting. I don't know what you think or know about the approach.
I think that Casper very much embraced allowing the story to be complicated and allowing the story to have multiple sides to it. That comes through really strongly in the next couple songs, just because there's a level of making sure that everyone gets to tell their side of the story, which I think is really interesting because we don't always see that. Typically, plays take a pretty hard stance on what it is they're trying to tell you. Or if they don't, they take a pretty hard stance on a question. And part of what I love about having worked on this particular section of Stories from Styx is, I mean, Hades and Persephone has been one of my favorite myths from when I was little. Like, I literally remember that being one of the first myths that I ever read when I was probably 6 or 7 years old. And I think that the more I've studied that myth as I've grown up, the more I'm like, there's a lot of different ways that this can directly be translated, but there are a lot of incredible experts who all have very well supported takes on whether or not this was a kidnapping, whether or not this was a love story, whether or not this is a story of liberation but without a lot of love at the core of it. Stories from Styx highlights several of those takes, and I agree with you. I love that the muse kind of sets it up as like the primary storyteller, or at least the primary narrator in this section, section as like, here's all the facts. You tell me what you think. That's why we're all here. That's why we all return to this myth over and over again, is because maybe you feel like you know, but then someone comes up with a really, really good interpretation that you like, and it challenges what you believe. And that is what storytelling should be about. So I personally love that discourse is created and furthered by this piece.
I agree. I feel like there are so many retellings out there. In every retelling, there is what you stay true to, and there is the creative liberties you take. And I think with a lot of mythology, there is that kind of mushy-gushy in-between space, especially when it comes with something that has to be translated. As far as I know, I think that most of the mythological interpretations come across as it is a kidnapping. I'm just a guy. This is just what I have heard, and like I would love like if anybody like has like any opinions, takes, any of that, to drop them in the comments. But all I ask is that everything remain kind of positive for the sake of discussion. It'll be interesting if like people provide sources. You know, the whole point of these projects existing is like to have conversations and to learn from each other. And like that's also what storytelling is about. Like storytelling inspires human connection. You get to understand someone's brain, in my opinion, better when you're discussing with them how they interpret a piece of art. Like you can really learn a lot about a person and also about the world and about yourself from that exchange of information.
I am so with you. And this is part of why I was so excited for this particular like video and doing this with you, is because like I know you have such an incredible literary background. I want all of that. I'm like, yum, yum, yum. Let me eat that up.
For context, I have a bachelor's degree in written arts from a pretty esteemed liberal arts college that I was really proud to go to, and I learned a lot while I was there. However, even though I did take a mythology class, it has been years since I took that class. And what I love about listening to stories from Styx is it's inspiring me to learn more about Greek mythology, like as well as like projects like Epic. I just feel like the Odyssey is something that is so everybody in some way, shape, or form knows the Odyssey because it is embedded in everything. Versus I feel like there are a lot of myths that like I feel like they're talked about less, and they're still like so interesting, at least when it comes to Greek mythology. Yes, okay. Let me. So yeah, she says that it's the most discussed. This artwork is gorgeous.
Artists on this project are real ones. They're so unbelievably bonkers talented.
That's really interesting. So Persephone feels, well, she starts out as Kore, if I'm correct, right? Like that's who she is before she becomes queen of the underworld. This is kind of implying that she feels trapped in this life almost because it's kind of too perfect. Like I hate to do this, but it's giving Feyre when she's in the spring court and she's like so tired of her shit.
I consider the second ACOTAR book, I consider that like a retelling of Hades and Persephone, to be honest. I remember reading that and being like, no, this is just Hades and Persephone. Like,
why
that's
is
crazy.
that so true? You broke my brain.
The things that we create and the stories that we tell are influenced by, you know, the things that came before that. The same questions and feelings that they were grappling with in literal ancient Greece, we feel today. Like, I'm sure all of us have felt stifled by a situation in our lives. Like, they were also feeling that, or they were also feeling scared, or they were also feeling lovelorn. I'm gonna nerd out so hard.
Go ahead, that's the point.
It just connects us all across space and time, and I think that's like the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. And so I want to do it forever and ever until I die. Amen. You know what I mean?
Yes. I know exactly what you mean. Just you wait, everyone. When I actually sit down and start writing, I agree so deeply. And that's why I'm always encouraging people to pursue their own creative projects and like inspiring them, like hopefully to create things, because genuinely it's not about being the best. And like I've had to like learn that myself. You make things because you love the act of doing it. But I'm starting to learn that that's enough. Wow.
It is the only thing, because there's no such thing as best. There's no such thing as perfect. Truly, these are things that were created by oppressive systems to try and keep us all from like getting too out of line or getting too crazy, in my opinion. But the reality is that there's something that sits at the core of this that speaks to the most ancient part of us. That's why we feel drawn to good stories, is because it's like a calling back of that ancient piece of ourselves to this grand conversation that's been going on since the beginning of our species. Sometimes you've got insecurities acting on your personage from the outside, and that can overwhelm and drown out the voice within you. And I always try and encourage people, like, none of this actually matters. Literally none of that. Like, at the end of your mortal life, you will not remember any of these things that happened. You will not remember any of these external voices. What you will remember is the moments when you truly acted from a place of love and passion and curiosity. Especially in the arts, always follow that feeling. Let the rest of this go, because the rest of this is trying to make you believe that a state of perfection or of right exists, and it doesn't. Shrug, shrug. Stay loving, friends.
Put in an applause. Put in an applause right now. Let me pick a little bit more at these lyrics.
And yet my dad has me discarded. That's why a mother's loves my sword and shield.
So the Persephone lore is Demeter is her mom, but who's Persephone's dad? Is it Zeus? It's always Zeus.
I've heard some other things as well over the years, but I think that the general consensus is that Zeus is her dad.
And in the beginning of all of this, she's kind of just, she's feeling this conflict, but this line, like, but my dad has me discarded. That's why a mother's love is my sword and shield. Like, that's setting up for what I think that's gonna come later. I don't know, like, I'm wondering about that dynamic in that relationship. Did Zeus do something to her in particular where she's trapped in some way also, or like is she just like bored of the life that she has been living for so long?
I think that there's a level of all those things, which is like, or at least the interpretation I took and the way I kind of, I always think about like a moment before, right? Like, what's the moment right before? Why is she singing? Because if you are singing in a musical, it usually means that there's a strong enough emotion that has kind of prompted you to begin trying to express something through music rather than just through mere words. And for me, when I was getting myself in a headspace of recording this song, I'm like, what's different about today? And I was struggling with that question, trying to figure out, because I'm like, there's not really anything. She's in this flower field, she's tending to the garden, she's musing about her parents and like what her purpose is. And then it was like light bulb moment. For her, the moment before is not that anything was different about today. It's that every single day is exactly the same. Stuck in this space. She only has two things to do: tend to flowers and talk to herself. No one seems to care. Like, her mom claims she loves her and does very deeply, but she's always flying off to do goddess duties, and she's always on Olympus, and she gets to rule the entire harvest, whereas like Persephone's literally just taking care of flowers. Zeus is her dad, but he doesn't come around very often, so like she doesn't. So I think honestly the thing that triggers her into singing this song in my mind is she finally has that breaking point where she's like, I have no purpose. Like, I have no justifiable reason. All the other gods have this incredible, insight into why they're here and what their fate is. And I know that I have some big fate at the end of the line, but how could I possibly when this is my everyday? Which I think she's gotten to a point where she's figured out that for some reason her purity and her, godhead is being protected for something that she doesn't know what, but to her it begins to feel like a prison. That's the take that I took on it, at least.
Yeah.
Everyone's got daddy issues. Daddy issues. She brings him up, but she's like, well, I barely ever met him, so wish I could. Little did she know.
No, I think that's so interesting, and I think like it really feeds into this thing that Casper was telling me about when I interviewed him, which he was talking about like the thread view, which is like his whole idea of having glimpses into what your fate is, but not quite knowing how you get to those points in the timeline. So Persephone in this song is aware that at some point, like, she is going to be like kidnapped, or that this thing is going to happen to her and with Hades, but it seems like she knows that something's going to happen, but she can't do any, she has no agency to get there. Even though she knows that something grandiose is supposed to take place, she can't take any action to make that happen. I know that something cray is probably about to happen right after this line, so like let me Teagan Earley is in the video! Teagan Earley's in the the video? What? Wait.
Why, Jackson?
Okay, let me just let it happen. Let me let it happen. Oh, wow. Hold! This is beautiful. You look gorgeous. These flowers are. What is the lore? What is the lore behind this happening?
Oh my
So,
God.
this is so
Or
cool.
this is actually so embarrassing. So Casper asked me to do this. He was like, I really would love for you to be, featured in a live action form, in the Crossroads video. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm honored. That's so exciting. Yeah, I would love to do that. And I have people who can shoot it for me. So I dragged Joe and Jack to the Lincoln Park Conservatory, which is this giant, like, indoor greenhouse with all of this gorgeous foliage in it. And in the back, they were literally doing a specialty exhibit on springtime flowers. So we just walked back
Wow.
there, and Joe went into director mode and was like shooting a bunch of really beautiful scenes. We filmed probably a bunch of different takes of the entire song. And then I sent them over to Casper, and he was like, oh my God, these are gorgeous. How did you get these? These are better than I could have imagined.
I literally would have never guessed.
She's asking herself right now, do I even have a choice about all of this?
All right. What goes on here? Gwendy!
Whoa!
Every time one of these pops up, I'm just endlessly amazed by these artists.
The animators on this project did such an incredible job. I love how there's multiple artists on even just one song. It seems like that almost feeds into the perspective that there is multiple interpretations of these myths.
Yes.
So it's kind of a more literal representation of that to have multiple artists on one song. Oh. Yeah, and so this feeds into Casper's whole thing that he talked about in Shades about how they know that they're going to be mythology and that people are going to perceive them, which creates another layer of added pressure because you want to do things right so you're remembered well. The amount that these gods and goddesses are experiencing, even though they're not mortals, in Stories from Styx specifically as a project, I think is such an interesting and a creative choice that I like.
Oh God!
No, Meadow, don't cry during Crossroads! That's crazy! Stop! Right? Okay, stop it. I know what's about to happen. Stop it! Yo! Do Baybox!
Baybox is nuts.
That's beautiful. I was so gagged by all of that.
I was going to say something I think is really interesting. She is the first one to reach out her hand. She makes the choice. And then he reaches out his. Her vines are the ones that make sure that they stay attached. That speaks to the intention of the moment. It's almost this thing of like, she sees a way out. She's like, this might be exactly what everyone's been warning me about, but that is my choice to make. It sounds like I can't avoid it anyway. And it is the one thing that will get me out of this suffocating state of redundancy. And then she just goes for it. And like that moment of agency reflected in the visuals, reflected in the music and how it swells in that moment, reflected in the vocal line that was written for me and the lyrics that were written for me where I get to sing that. It's like almost like in that moment, it doesn't necessarily matter whether they're in love or whether they're not in love or whether it's a kidnapping or whether it's whatever. What matters is she finally got to make a choice for herself.
I think that's beautiful. I do agree. At first when I saw that she jumped right into the chariot, I was like, okay, yes, you have this happening in front of you in the animatic. You need to keep the lyrics in mind, I feel, like as this moment is happening. Like, even though this is a moment of agency, Persephone, who is Kore in this moment, is still like, in a way, she has been isolated and hasn't experienced much. She's coming from a place of, you know, like she just wants to do something for herself, but her coming from that place isn't necessarily an informed or educated one. And
Yeah.
she's in this moment that she chooses to reach out her hand. Like, I wanna, there's something, so the way that it's drawn, both of them just look so like they've been waiting for this moment the entire time, but they're almost so overwhelmed by that. There's so much hesitation. Even though she's going, yes, I'm going to go with you, there's this back and forth that's happening inside her as she's making that choice. And it's a split-second decision. If she hadn't had done that, who's to say what would have happened?
I liken a lot of things in my life to the first time I ever jumped off a waterfall. I remember being at the top of that waterfall, and I am not good with heights. I want to have this experience, and I want to be able to swim in this gorgeous waterfall pool down below. But the only way to get down there safely is to literally jump off a cliff. And the guide is telling me, like, if you jump, you know, too far to the left, you will hit solid rock. If you jump right down the middle, it'll be really fun. It'll be the most rewarding experience of your life. So you have those external voices speaking to you. With Persephone, that's Zeus and Demeter and all of the nymphs and whoever she's been kind of trapped with this whole time, the fates. You have your internal voice in full conflict, where one is saying, well, the experience is going to be great, like it's going to finally give you what you've been looking for, but oh my gosh, I'm really scared about it. What should I do? What should I do? What should I do? And you don't even necessarily fully process you're taking the step until after you're already falling. And at least then I moved forward. I didn't remain trapped in one place. You're absolutely right. He could be a psychopath. He could kill her in the next moment. He could be the greatest love that she's ever known. Like, he could be any of these things. She doesn't know. It's complicated. And I love that it's complicated, because in those few seconds, in the animatics, in the music, in the lyrics, you see all of those things kind of start to play out, or you think about all those possibilities. It is very rare that I've come across moments that are that rich in interpretation in things that I've done.
Yeah, it seems like Stories from Styx wants to tell a version of this story where Persephone gets to have way more of a voice than she did get to have in the mythology. But
Yes.
I feel like in the time that we exist in right now, a moment like this one is so fruitful. I like what's going on with the interpretation of Persephone, in the sense that it is layered and it is complicated, like you're saying. It circles back to what I said kind of at the beginning, where I really like Stories from Styx as a themed album, as a project. The fact that we are just sparking the conversation and encouraging the conversation to continue happening. It's almost like that's why the muse is telling the stories to the people at all, you know, for the sake of keeping them alive, you know.
Well, and what I will say, we haven't heard every side of the story of this moment yet. So.
Okay, let me go to where we were. This is crazy. And this music, like,
Oh.
that guitar, what? Oh, stop it. Okay, like, you know, sometimes we can let people be happy, you know? Like, not everything has to be sad. That was beautiful. I know that I say that every time, but, like, that was beautiful. Wow, and, like, your singing on this song is incredible. Like, your range is insane.
As Athena in Epic, I stay primarily in my lower chesty range, and because a lot of my pop music is not, you know, like I have some rangy moments in my pop music, but typically I want to stay down in a more speaky range, because I want people to be able to know the lyrics and like know what I'm saying and stuff like that. And so when this came back into my existence, all of a sudden I'm like, oh, interesting. My mixed bell is not as strong as it was a year ago or 2 years ago or whatever. I got to train that back up. Otherwise, this is going to be non-sustainable or agonizing or whatever, or not, it's certainly not healthy. I got back into, my voice lessons, and I said, hey, here's what I'm trying to achieve, and blah, blah, blah. And then I would train myself every single day to get back into that mix range. Feeling out your mix belt is, I think, one of the hardest things for a singer to do. I would say it took me about a month to get back to the point where I could do that like big old option up.
Make sure you guys check out the Patreon for the uncut version of this video. Thank you guys so much for supporting me. And make sure you check out Teagan Earley every single place that she exists ever. Make sure you check out Timo on any streaming platform that you have. Teagan, is there anything in particular you want to plug or speak about before we go to the next one?
Keep streaming stories from Styx, and stream Timo. We're trying to get the Lovers EPs up to a multitude of fabulous streams as we head into show season. I will be doing a show in May with the Aaron Alexander, so be there or be square.
Teach you all the lessons you never could. This cruel world doesn't give out friends, it's just funny good. So fight, little wolf, fight. Wanna entertain me? Fight, little wolf, fight. See how you take this. Fight, little wolf, strike. Wanna be a man and fight, little wolf, fight, little wolf, fight. Or die, little wolf, die. Does it know it's fight or fight, little wolf, fight. Just die, little wolf, die. Run away before you die, little wolf, die, little wolf, die.
Need some help? What's going on here? Is your plan to stand around? 'Cause our subjects are really fighting back. I don't know how. Uppercut. Now. How did I do that? Is time now moving slow? No, I just made your thoughts quick. That is so sick. All right, let's try this again. I've no respect for bullies, those who impose their will. I've seen plenty enough to truly understand this kind of feel. Let's teach this dog a lesson. Incredible is kind. One young wolf has a larger heart than all these men combined. Fight, little wolf, fight. Know that you got some. Fight, little wolf, fight. Let's see how you do. Strike, little wolf, strike. Don't go out now. Fight, little wolf, fight. Little wolf, fight. Fight, little wolf, fight. Oh, maybe I pushed a little bit too hard.
Go back and cry in your corner. Make sure your mother hears. If she won't choose a man to adorn her, will bring blood and tears.
With that, guys, I'll see you in the next one.